Ah, Good afternoon, everyone. Sam here. This is the notes to a workshop on connecting with your matron and patron deities. I've given this workshop several times in person, but I think I'll just record the lecture portion of it here, and hopefully we can all get together and have a conversation about whether it makes sense or works or whatever. I'm going to begin by saying that my theology is pragmatic. I'm interested in what works rather than any absolute truth that may or may not exist, that's non testable when I might believe that I'm right next to it, and that has no immediate practical utility. It's not that I don't believe in things like love and truth and beauty, among other things, but that they're really revealed in practice as we experience them and work to realize them, and not as grand abstractions. In the same way, the gods are enacted. They're made real through experiences with other people, forces of nature, and the realities of living in society. The most common theological position in the Wiccan movement is duotheistic, that is, that there exists a great feminine energy and a great masculine energy, and that all goddesses are part of the great feminine and all gods are aspects of the great masculine. For a variety of reasons, I disagree with this position. The historical facts appear to be that in polytheistic religions, the different goddesses and gods are seen as different individuals with whom one can have relationships, and that their gender is simply one aspect which they might share with one another, as they might share an interest in blacksmithing or warfare or basket weaving. Gender is also quite fluid, with deities shifting frequently from one sex to another, or shifting from human like to tree like to horse form, or even more outre forms. My version of Wiccan theology is panentheist and polytheist. The gods are present and partially embodied in every aspect of the material world. They are numerous individual beings with different sets of specific powers and interests. Human beings also differ, and we have different interests that predispose both humans and deities to form relationships with one another, which are based on our affinities. While it's possible to initially talk about the generic energy of the divine female or divine male, in general, that kind of identification is only useful in the earliest stages of spiritual development. And it's replaced by the invocation or evocation of specific deities as one progresses. Although all gods of both sexes and a range of genders could potentially be one's matron or patron, we usually begin by building relationships with the most generic and least personal, the female principle and the male principle, and the sex that corresponds to the physical sex of the person connecting with the deity. The gods have their own opinions, of course, and often a specific goddess or god will come to a person and claim a person as their servant. This is a highly prized development, and it's one goal of the early stages of coven training in Wicca to acquire a matron and eventually also a patron deity to oversee and participate in your spiritual training. In a polytheistic religion, people have relationships of respect and worship with a number of deities while being really close and tight with only a couple, with friendly but more distant relations with the others. There's generally three ways that matron and patron relationships are formed. And by the way, these relationships are rarely exclusive, although they sometimes are. And people may have these relationships with different deities as they change and grow. Typically, I would expect someone to be adopted by a different deity at each level of their initiation. First way that these relationships are formed, the god chooses. For whatever reason, and sometimes it's no reason that anybody can tell, a goddess or a god will tap a person on the shoulder and say, "You're mine." Sometimes it's as clear as that, but more often, the realization of her or his interest grows. You may find, for example, images of black cats and actual black cats coming to be more common in your life in odd coincidental moments, or a particular word or name of a deity will keep appearing in reading material, or your dreams will prompt investigation until the realization dawns that Bast wants to have you as her servant. The second means is that a person comes to a clearer understanding of who they fundamentally are, and they see that a particular goddess or god represents the best and strongest expression of that type of person. An animal lover who strikes up a relationship with Pan as the shepherd and the piper at the gates of dawn, the protector of the animals, or a hunter who connects with Heron the hunter and the hunted, or a homebody who connects with Hestia, and so on. The third, the goddess or god, represents or embodies something that you desire to be, and so she or he will help you to become stronger in that area of your life. For example, a person who wanted to be more eloquent might work with Mercury. A person who wanted to be more graceful and attractive could connect with Freda Erzuli. And someone who wanted to hone their skills would get together with Lou or Bridget. In all cases, this is not something for nothing. The gods demand that a person do the work and serve them wholeheartedly in their areas of interest in return for their help. Making agreements with the gods obliges one to uphold your end of the agreement, and be careful what you agree to, and be careful that you know whom you are serving. A war goddess like the Morrigan is not a kindly mother, and she dislikes being treated like one. The god Dionysus does not like people who are inclined to temperate behavior, but demands passionate excess, and so on. It's rather like having a powerful friend who takes you on as their protege. In other words, devoting yourself to the gods does not automatically guarantee you their wholehearted support. That has to be earned. But that devotion gets their attention. And you have the option of refusing to be involved with a particular goddess or god, although you will then be frustrated in the areas that they rule over. We participate in the divine. We co-create the gods, or at least we express them through our lives, not apart from them, but swept up into the divine purposes. Now, there are ways to go from this abstract realization to a stronger connection and involvement with the gods. First of all, there are things called rites of exchange and communion. These are rituals that are done to celebrate and affirm the relationship that an individual or a group has with their matron and patron deities. So they're rites of praise and celebration that might include an element of prayer, offerings, or supplication as well. They often include a restatement of the agreements which the gods have made with the people in the ritual and the commitments that the people have made. They might include apologies from the people for not upholding their side of the bargain, or appeals to the gods to do their part. They emphasize the admirable qualities of deities, tell stories of their great exploits and their features, and will lavishly praise them. I'm assuming that you're beginning here with a desire to find and connect with a matron or patron, or with a sense that someone is trying to get your attention. Well, to begin with, do a little research. Who is this goddess or god? And why are they interested in hanging around with you? Or why are you interested in getting their attention? And how do they like to be worshipped? It's gloriously inappropriate and insulting to assume that you know everything that you need to know by listening to your gut. or by some syncretic all goddesses are one balderdash. Gods and goddesses of war are not the great loving mother, to take a glaringly obvious example. Calling the Morrigan as Great Mother pisses her off. Calling Kali as though she were cuddly and all-nourishing results in her cutting your head off. Calling Ares as the calm and benevolent god of peace is simply ignorant. Because the gods are not well served by generic, dispassionate recognition or by rote performance of rituals and obligations, although such recognition is part of the duty of a pagan religious person as an expression of general piety which pleases the gods, specific gods impose specific demands. A passionate life, one that involves the gods, is so much more satisfying for human beings, and passionate devotion to the paths of our matrons and patrons will develop us as people and as pagans. I'll recommend books. Jeanette Paris and James Hillman's books are powerful descriptions of living in the service of, as embodiments of, our gods, although from a Jungian, not Wiccan perspective, and I'll strongly recommend them. So, know to whom you are speaking, and talk with them appropriately. Although your grasp of Koine Greek may be lousy, there are good translations of rituals and invocations to the Greek gods, for example, and modeling a ritual of praise to one of them on a Greek original will bring power into the connection and honor them appropriately. There's no need to grovel, but an attitude of respect is a good idea. Within the standard Wiccan ritual format, our generic ritual would be clearing the space, grounding participants, casting the circle, calling the guardians of the directions with particular emphasis on the aspects of the gods to be celebrated and honored, inviting the celebrants to come in, asking for the gods to be present and praising them, and calling in elaborate detail, undertaking an offering of thanks, but also a sacrifice of food and drink, blessing the participants and sharing in a feast, and closing down by dismissing the directions and thanking the gods, then grounding and ending the circle. The standard format can be adapted to any number of different purposes, and I recommend finding and adopting a standard format that makes sense to you that includes these various elements. Now, the most appropriate deities to honor are your matron and patron, and if there's a prayer that has recently been answered, the goddess or god to whom you prayed. You might also choose to honor a goddess or god that you admire but do not have a strong relationship with, in hopes of building such a connection. Don't worry about embarrassing them by praising them too much. You can and you should pour out your heart in adoration. The ritual can be as elaborate or as simple as it suits you. So long as your purpose is clear, you are honest in your praise and dedication, and you follow through on any commitments you make in circle. Calling on your ancestors is important in family rituals, as they are already well disposed towards you and interested in being involved in your lives. Calling upon the gods of the household, the Lares, the Roman spirits of the family line, and Penates, the guardians of the household and of the hearth fire, such as Vesta or Hestia, are appropriate as well. A good date for rituals is either the feast day of a given goddess or god, a prominent ancestor's birth or death date, Samhain, or the birthday of your family's founder or its wedding anniversary, depending on whom you are calling. Tuesday is sacred to the goddesses of war, Wednesday, goddesses of communication, Friday, the gods of beauty and sex, as examples. A simple and effective family ritual, as an example, would be a joint offering at an ancestor altar by the elders, followed by a meal together, perhaps including an offering and a praise song to the gods of your household. A modified version of the Jewish Seder or a Thanksgiving dinner ritual would fit very well here. A birthday ritual can be included, particularly if there are young children singing happy birthday to Athena. If you wish to perform a formal rite in honor of the gods, it should hew pretty closely to the forms and style of the original without copying it. It's inappropriate for a non-Hellene to perform an exact copy of a rite to Artemis, but it honors her to infuse a Wiccan rite with that spirit and phrasing. And as a suggestion, quoting directly with attributions from documents like the Homeric hymn to Artemis or the Orphic hymn to Artemis, both are ancient and culturally appropriate. Other sources can be used, of course, depending on the deities that you're honoring. And frank, true, enthusiastic celebration of the beauty, power, wisdom, and attributes of the gods being honored, even beyond the rather stuffy Protestant Northern European norms of expression, would be appropriate. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about becoming a priestess or priest. Wiccan tradition is centered on the mystical path of a deeper identification with a particular goddesses or gods, as you go from being a worshiper or devotee to being a priestess of the deity. Getting the call from a particular deity or even establishing a strong personal relationship with her or him does not make a person a priestess. It's a necessary first step. To connect with the goddess or god is to understand oneself in terms of the responsibilities as well as the opportunities for connection that you have with other people, nature, and the powers of existence. Wiccan theology recognizes that the picture drawn of the deity is an imaginative doorway into a realm of experience, rather than necessarily being a factual description of who really connected with the person having the experience. Our beliefs are our tools, and the imaginative elaboration and intensification of our beliefs and the experiences that follow from them are valuable skills to learn. Learning and practicing these skills is a conscious goal of training for Wiccan leaders. Wiccans view mystical experience as an essential part of clergy training, and we expect our highest level clergy to undergo trance experience on a regular basis. Mystical experience provides energy to all else that happens in the religion, and the ritual and institutions that contain and provide meaning to these experiences are very important. Mystical training is rational. Individuals that are recognized as talented in trance states undergo these experiences on behalf of an entire community. Again, it's not a question of belief, but of experience. Our intention is to produce a religion of prophets with direct access to the gods, using symbols, including images and beliefs as tools. We connect directly with divinity. Wicca is an elitist religion in that sense. Most people are not suited to it. Belief is not enough. It takes talent and the capacity to experience certain things and to go through a process of personal transformation, initiation, before one can become a priestess or priest. It's also not a solo path, but one where the most profound experiences are the results of group efforts. The most important ritual practice for priestesses in training is drawing down the moon, which is a ritual of ecstatic possession trance. It's a ritual of incarnation in which the divinity becomes human and present in and through our bodies. The priestess opens herself up, surrenders her body in trust to be inhabited by an awake and aware goddess. For a short time, typically only a few minutes, her body is the body of a goddess. Priests and priestesses are also trained in visualization, symbolism, sacred movement and mudras, mythology and theatrical skills, concentration and meditation, and a range of other skills and techniques, in particular techniques of magical ritual, which vary depending on the emphases of their particular teachers and groups as they progress up through the levels of trance experience and priesthood training. But the central experience and the axis around which all of the other training revolves is trance induction and the experiences that are derived from it, and the incorporation of those experiences into a larger pattern of clergy work. There's 8 specific magical techniques that Gerald Gardner and the first Wiccan covens used to a greater or lesser extent. Some are widely practiced now, others are not, and practitioners have added ideas from other places. Wiccan clergy will undergo training in the use of each of these techniques, and I'm including them, of course, in this in the course that I'm teaching on Wiccan skills and techniques. The first, meditation or concentration. Pretty self-explanatory. Chants, spells, and invocations. Projection of the astral body, a term you may not be familiar with. There's a subtle energy body that surrounds the physical body and is attached to it. It is said to contain the soul and a personal viewpoint. It's possible to enter a state of deep meditation and relaxation and imaginatively send this viewpoint self away from the physical body to explore either the physical world, to find out things at a distance or cause things to happen, or to explore the inner worlds and the non-physical realities, which are often called the astral or star realms. Trance, incense, drugs and wine. Dancing, blood control, use of the cords, the scourge, and the great rite. The great rite is the central mystery of Wicca, as well as a technique for using and raising energy. The priestess and priest, both in a state of trance and possessed by the goddess and her consort, have sex. It should go without saying that this is not obligatory, that it is always with the complete and informed consent of all people involved. Several of the 8 magical techniques that Gerald Gardner talked about are also techniques for inducing or deepening trance. As well as techniques for inducing trance, a good priestess or priest will know how to end a trance gently and how to bring their partner back to consensus reality, and then debrief them and assist them in incorporating whatever they learned or experienced back into their lives. Wiccan clergy should undertake training in the use of each of the Gardnerian techniques at least, although physical limitations and taste mean that not everyone will practice all of them. More important, though, than any technique are qualities of character. Developing these qualities of character takes time, and trust cannot be forced in the slightest. First, of course, our bodies are sacred and holy. They are specific examples of the divine potential to create, to move, and to express itself through matter. The world has not fallen away from grace, and neither our bodies nor our spirits are contaminated or evil. Second, our bodies have particular abilities and senses that give the divine pleasure. Our pleasures and experiences interest and engage the gods. They like to experience reality through our bodies. And third, some goddesses and gods are interested in being involved with people and with our lives, and some are interested in each of us and in our specific lives. Some goddesses and gods have an emotional or erotic interest in us, and some are just friendly. We're worthy because the gods want to come and be with us, worthy because we want to serve the gods, and worthy because we will become better people by doing this. Now, the great religious and ethical question, how should I live to be a good and ethical person, has a different outcome for people like Wiccans who follow a polytheistic religion without a single holy book. We go from there to asking, who am I? And then follow that up with, who are the goddesses and gods that are mainly concerned with the type of person that I fundamentally am? We don't need or want anything except to be who we are. And we don't want to be all like the same perfect person, but we want to be the best and strongest, the most ethical, the most interesting version of who we are. The gods are not role models that we wish to emulate in every detail. They are powerful and beautiful and obsessively centered in their areas of excellence. They cannot point us toward a happy and balanced life, not as individuals, because they are anything but balanced. They cannot show us an ethical, just, and moral way of living because they are neither ethical, nor just, nor moral, nor living beings. In the same way as it is absurd to speak of an ethical or moral mountain, or the ethics of electricity or gravity, it is meaningless to speak thus of most of the gods. Assisting individuals to become like the gods by establishing the conversation of our holy guardian angel and finding those that want to work with us individually or collectively, while remaining true to our humanity, is our essential religious task. By saying that one is a child of a particular goddess, one takes on her attributes and affirms her as central to one's understanding of oneself. One commits to personal development in tune with this goddess's way and can expect her help in developing an ethical and personal style that fits with this way. But the final decision must rest with the human side of us. What we need to develop as we develop Wiccan ethics and ways of being together in the world is a model of human excellence that we can aspire to. That is not a single person, because each person differs in their needs, capacities, and tastes, and one size does not fit all. And a model that respects our need to be moral agents and to make individual ethical choices. Now I'm going to briefly discuss developing a Wiccan ethics. In the broad shared sense, the sense of how should I live my life together with other people, ethics and morality are human agreements. They're not universal truths handed down from Olympus or whatever. In a polytheology, the God card does not trump anything. When I say that my patron demands certain things of me, this imposes no requirement on you to do or say anything, since his rules apply only to his people, and of course he only rewards his people. In order to persuade you to behave in a certain way, I have to genuinely persuade you of the value of a particular ethical position, and I have to be open to being persuaded myself, since I don't necessarily have a truth for anyone but myself. We must be in dialogue around morality, rather than giving a set of detailed rules and requiring them of everyone. Dialogue and absence of dogma are essential qualities of polytheism. We must cooperate as individuals and as communities to seek the truth, because our gods are biased as individuals, and no one of them has the whole truth. The ethical questions in our relationships with our gods are not just individual matters either, but they apply to our temple work and ritual, to coven work, and how we are as religious people in the larger world. Now, because the gods differ, different ethics result from relationships with different gods, and our ethical choices must ultimately come from ourselves and not from them. We adopt ethics that come from our nature and potential as human animals and our membership in particular societies. The great Greek philosopher Aristotle came up with an ethical system and model 2,400 years ago that's still well suited to our needs. He argued that we don't need ethical systems that list rules, do's, and don'ts, or that try to deal with every conceivable question. People are different, and there are simply too many situations to ever have a completely exhaustive list of responses. And of course, rigidity and rules-based behavior is not natural, not rational, or spontaneous, or beautiful. His idea of virtue ethics gives a great variety of moral ways to live, depending on the kind of person that you fundamentally are, and the agreements that you make with your gods to help develop yourself. What we need instead of rules, said Aristotle, is to develop strength of character. A person of good character will naturally choose to do what is right under whatever circumstances they find themselves in. They will have a well-developed sense of appropriateness, appropriate to them, not necessarily to anyone else, and will consistently act in tune with the good. The means to develop strength of character, said Aristotle, is to understand that there are virtues that can be cultivated, effectively like developing a series of good moral and ethical habits. By developing the habit of always doing the right thing, we will respond to any situation by doing what is right in that situation. The servant of Aphrodite will behave differently than a devotee of Kuan Yin or of Odin or of Mars, but they all can be ethical people and live the good life. We don't need to aim towards a rigid set of rules, but we need to seek to become people with strong understandings of ourselves and good personal ethical codes who can be trusted to behave appropriately. Now, for some exercises for connection. This is, after all, a workshop on connecting with your matron and patron deity. The key point of these exercises is to train the mind to find the voice of your matron and patron deity, to ask for their advice and to receive it, and to cultivate a close and personal relationship with them. This will also assist in prayer and spell work, connecting with other goddesses and gods. In effect, you need to learn to pay attention in a different way to thoughts, to events inside and outside of your body, and to interpret these things differently. Like learning any new skill, first comes finding the language, getting the experiences through practice and trial and error, and then your skill develops from that foundation. We'll begin with an old idea, the willing suspension of disbelief. Let us pretend that the gods exist, and that some of them are interested in communicating with you, building a relationship with you, and helping you in your life. Then go about building a relationship with those gods that you feel called to. The gods are made real, not in the abstract, but in our actions in the world. The goddess of love is found when you are loving. The god of agriculture when you are gardening or farming. The goddess of war when you are fighting, and so on. Playing and pretending will make the gods real and the relationship stronger emotionally. Pretend that when you are walking and worrying about some problem, that your matron goddess is walking beside you and you're talking together about the issue. When you are doing some activity, think of the god of that thing. If you're a welder, think of Vulcan, for example, working alongside you, drawing from his strength and his excellence, and feel yourself as a partner in the task with him. As you do the thing that the goddess or god is connected with, as well as you are able, feel that she or he appreciates you and is grateful for your efforts to make this activity as excellent as you can and to perform the task in their honor. Know that the encouraging and positive feelings and ideas that you have about yourself and your performance of this task are those of the goddess. She wants to build you up and make you ever more capable in making her real in the world through the particular things that she most values. Accept those parts of the internal dialogue as being closer to the God and bringing you closer to Him. And ignore the negative, critical, and belittling comments. Those always come. But they're reflecting your own fears and insecurities and not the divine connection that you're trying to build up. The skills of prayer have to be learned and they develop over time. The world, a good place to start is, of course, attention to the world and the joy and the delight that we can find here. The world is saturated with the divine, and it has a great variety of different ways to find the gods and establish a relationship with them. Whenever you are out in the world and something catches your attention for whatever reason, an opening flower, a patch of bright sunlight, a couple of lovers sitting together, let yourself savor that thing or image, or just feel it and soak it up and see it as an expression of the divine, the endless beauty and creative capacity of the goddess. Remember as many details as you can of that thing later on. See the color of the person's eyes, the shape of their hands, the wind blowing hair. If a chance encounter with wonder can be recalled in detail during meditation later, the amount of detail and the capacity for attention will build up over time, and it will make those moments more common. Now, as to prayer itself, if there is a goddess or god that has already tapped you on the shoulder and you feel drawn to develop a relationship with them, begin again by doing some research. Find one of the great stories, the myths. Set aside a small amount of time every day to read this story and imagine yourself as part of it. In the stories, for example, of Demeter and Persephone in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, you might take the scene where Demeter, in the form of an old woman, is the nursemaid to the young prince Demophon, and she dips him into the fire to make him immortal, only to be interrupted by his horrified mother, Metanara, before all of his body has been hardened. Begin by seeing yourself as a person, perhaps an enslaved person, watching the scene unfold. What did you see, smell, feel, taste, hear? Later, put yourself into the different actors in the story, Demeter, Demophon, Metanara. What did they experience, see, hear, smell, and so on? What was the result? How does this story show the goddess as powerful and beautiful? As part of the meditation and prayer, talk with the characters in the story. Make it completely real to you. Dwell on the images arising in this story and others, and feel as deeply as you can. Engage all of your senses in your imagination. Build as many details as you can, paying attention to everything. The meaning inside the story will unfold as it becomes part of your experience of life. This deliberate, repeated use of inner visual and sensory experience, interacting with the story and its characters, and deepening the amount of sensory detail creates a stronger set of skills for connecting to the gods. Building the capacity for stronger mental imagery is central to trance journeying, guided meditation, pathworking, out-of-body experience, and many shamanic practices. I suggest that people learning the skills take a minimum of 20 minutes a day for a minimum of a month to practice these skills and run through the exercise with your preferred story of the gods. To move from that intensive training to making the relationship real involves both regular conversation and, above all, mindful service to the gods as they work in the world. Ask frequently for help, and trust that your matron and patron are on your side as you strive to become stronger, better, and more competent. It is not necessarily your accomplishment, but your genuine effort and commitment that they appreciate and love in you. But if you do nothing in service, that means nothing at all. So, I hope this has been helpful. Take care now.